Hey, everybody, welcome back to Concealed Carry Texas podcast. You got Evan and Todd here, and we have a special guest with us, Mr. Brian Hill of the Complete Combatant. Brian, thank you for taking the time to come and join us.
I'm honored to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, sir. I got to say, I mean, to me, like this is we've talked to several and interviewed several instructors on our show, and I got to say, I kind of fangirled when you responded back saying that you were going to show up. So I'm excited about this one. One day in the future, I hope very much to find myself in one of your classes.
I come to Texas a lot, so
I know that's
yeah.
that's the thing too. It's finding time where I can catch you on the road as well.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we wanted to invite Brian on. I really like the way he pushes his information and his training and the way he communicates it to everybody, and he does a very good job, particularly in accuracy, efficiency, and performance. And Brian has a very particular take on this that I haven't heard from anywhere else. So, you really break it up into sections of where you need to be. Can you kind of describe where you go with that?
So my background is a lifelong professional coach, which is fairly unusual for the shooting sports. Mostly people become shooters. They come out of law enforcement, military, and I had law enforcement and whatnot. But I was primarily a martial arts coach in the last 3 decades, mixed martial arts. And what we had to do was develop a way to communicate well with the problems that we face. And it seems odd, but it's very much similar. Somebody trying to strike another person or to take them down or to grapple with them, the same problems that we encounter in shooting. It's just in shooting that the tool does most of the work. So you don't have to be as physically fit, but the mind responds in the same way. And what we have is we have a series of cognitive biases that we all operate under. And even if you're aware of them, you can't get past them. Unfortunately, that's how they work. And when we talk about shooting, people tend to fall in a camp of accuracy mode or speed and efficiency mode. And they argue back and forth as if they get to choose one over the other. And it's very difficult to do that in a fight. There are metrics that simply exist in fighting, like 5 punches per second, 5 steps per second. A good shooter can shoot at least 5 shots per second. So we can always say there's a certain amount of time on the table and there's a certain amount of accuracy on the table. And what we have to do as shooters is be able to combine those. And in order to combine them, what we really need is performance mode. And performance mode is the one clear goal that allows us to be present to do the job that we need to. So I break them down even simpler and I make it in accuracy mode. It is good enough. What is good enough? The target tells you whether you can hit it. And speed and efficiency mode, what did you see enough? Because a lot of people that work out of speed and efficiency are kinesthetically guided. So they have a high level of trust intrinsically. So they're going to go with it. Oftentimes they don't see anything though when that happens. So we teach them to see a little bit. And in performance mode is just simply do enough. Don't do any extra. Create neutrality in your movement so you're not adding too much tension, because tension tends to be prejudgment of the outcome. So the tenser the shooter is, the tenser during the match or shooting or doing a drill or qualification is, means he's already prejudged the outcome. And what we see is that really impacts the performance mode. And when somebody says, I'm going to be more accurate, usually what they mean is I'm going to be more tense. And when they say, I'm just going to go faster and let go, is what they're going to say is, I'm not going to see anything. I'm just going to fire the gun randomly. And what we're looking for is a blend of these things and the ability for the person to understand the bias that inherently does them. Like for me, I'm really an accuracy first shooter at heart. Came out of the precision background, shot long range rifle. So it's very rewarding to shoot accuracy mode, but it's the one thing in the world I don't need to practice really. I just need to verify the skill exists. And my friend Tim Herron, I was in his class and he was telling me, he was like, you don't like to miss. And, nobody really likes to miss, I guess, but he was telling me you don't like to miss. And I was like, he's onto something here. But what I really don't like to do is let go and trust myself. And that's what speed and efficiency requires, is the ability to do that. So what I've done is try to make a framework that communicates with the shooter more clearly what's going on with ourselves instead of a technical way to get over it, because a lot of instructors want to technique you through this, but this is really a physiological and a psychological problem. Physiologically, you're getting a huge dump of adrenaline and cortisol, and those are not the hormones you want. And psychologically, you're under pressure of too soon, too late, too much information, too little information. What's the order of importance? Do I know what to do next? And what we have to do is kind of use these modes to guarantee that our practice is rewarding. And the final thing on this is most people don't understand really how to practice very well. The problem is, like much that we do in the world right now, it's instantly rewarding. And the brain doesn't really relate very well to that. We don't get the dopamine that we need to if we get rewarded all the time. In fact, it gets harder and harder to source that. And in practice, what you should be doing is most of the time, it should be hard work. If you're an accuracy first shooter and you miss, that's the time that you're going to do better instantly because you're going to pay attention. If you're a speed shooter and you throw a mic out there, you're going to pay attention right then. And the reward comes from the hard work, and it comes sporadically. And the more sporadically it comes, the better the reward system is for us. So I can't simply say you're going to get better on this because statistically your average stays the same. And sometimes you do a little bit better, sometimes you do a little bit worse. And what I find with shooters is they get so negative in their self-image that they interfere with this reward process that is inherently negative by nature. And they get in their own way. And we've all heard that, quick, get out of your own way as a shooter. And I think that's what we're talking about with this is it's the filters of the brain and it's the biochemistry that rewards the state of practice.
I definitely resonated whenever you're talking about being tense, especially before shooting a qual, shooting anything of that nature. By nature, I tend to get myself wound up. It goes kind of not just shooting, but I tend to get myself wound up and get tense before any type of a test judgment because I want to do the best that I possibly can do. And I've found myself before in doing that, ending up, it kind of goes horribly wrong because then I get in my head. If something goes wrong, it's hard to reset and continue on, especially if it's something, under a time limit or something like that. I find it hard to stop, reset, even if it's just a second, just take that breath and continue on, be able to shake it off. So that actually resonated with me. That's something that I know is an issue, and, I certainly haven't found the end all be all for it at this point, but I acknowledge it, and I definitely resonate with you saying that's an issue that people face because I'm a perfect example of that.
So can I ask you a question or two? I'm just going to go into coaching mode because that's what I do. Do you tend to procrastinate before the goal?
Yeah.
So what you're doing is a preloading pressure, which is very important. In the fight game as a professional cornerman in MMA, they say when the fight's won or lost in a locker room, it has really nothing to do with what we say to them. It's how we modulate our behavior. So some people really need to get a lot of pressure on themselves to perform well. So some fighters, I'd have to say, man, that guy's huge and he's going to kill you. And then some guys get way too hyped. So I'd say, listen, you practiced hard. He's not as big as we thought. He doesn't look very sharp. So what we're doing is looking for the way to modulate ourselves. So we don't get to the part where you're talking about where it overwhelms you and you need to reset, which is a disassociation. It shuts down. But if you recognize that little bit of preloading, that little bit of stress is very important for you, you'll perform better because then you can release the struggle and recognize that it's just part of the ride. And in fact, it's what makes life kind of fun is that you just don't want to get to that point where it re-shunts you all the way back to the beginning. And so what I tell people is be nervous. You should be. If you want to do well, you should be, but you shouldn't be worried about the outcome. You should only keep the one clear goal in your mind, which is, so say we're shooting, see your dot, call your shots, see your front sights, call your shots. And as long as you stay in one clear goal, you'll get the immediate feedback. The feedback will allow you to really get ahead of the process. And then you'll challenge yourself relative to your skill level, which means not too much, not too little, because it's interesting. The brain needs adrenaline to learn. So this is an important process. So start with a clear goal, get the immediate feedback, be as present as you can by having that goal of just for shooting, it's see and feel. There's nothing more to shooting. We can say sound has some play in it. If I'm shooting a bill drill, I can hear the cadence, but primarily it's see and feel. And primarily people favor one over the other. They look really hard and they over aim the gun, and then the tension feeds into that. And they say now, which existed in the past, and therefore it ruins what they're doing. So just an idea, if that'll help you in the future. This is what we do with high consequence, high risk environments. And it's important. I heard you guys talking about medical class coming up. So, this is the same as triage. What is important? What can I do? And who can I save right now? Well, what is important is what's the goal? And the next thing is what is the feedback? And then you'll know if you're doing the right thing. And then you give yourself permission in the struggle to say, hey, listen, that's not working. I can change right now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's definitely something to work on. Hopefully I can put that to good use.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
There's a lot of levers in here that we pull. And as human beings, we're not really sure what we're doing sometimes. And it's unfortunate, I think, especially in shooting. I call shooting kind of pre-UFC martial arts.
Okay.
It's very much dictated by personality over principle. I do it this way, therefore you should do it this way. And, as long as we're all built exactly the same and we're shooting the same gun, it works for us. But what we found is in fighting, as soon as we got to a point where it was no longer style dictated it was the fighter that did it, we had to really change the way that we approached this, and we had to generate principles that allowed us to manage the person under stress, because there is a portion of your brain that's really good at this. And if you can turn the front part of your brain off, which is called transient hypofrontality, and just not judge yourself, not tell time, and not have a voice of critics in your mind, and find out what these triggers are, you can perform at a very high level very quickly. And that's what I hope to introduce in my coaching.
Excellent.
So that's interesting that you talked about too, not to essentially not to be too hard on yourself, because I've had the essence too, or the situation where, I perform poorly, and whether it's in front of peers or at a class or something like that, and I get in my head whether I just wasn't mentally with it that day or what it was. And you get frustrated because it's like, well, I know that I can perform better than this. And so now that I've performed poorly, I'm like determined to get back to that performance that I know that I can get to. But like you said, it's just constantly in your head and critiquing, and not just performing as you would naturally perform. Yeah, I've been there and done that too, kind of same as Evan has as well.
Let's talk about the critic real quick. So what I teach in class is the emotionless correction, which means we get rid of all of us have a chorus of voices that live in our mind, but they're not us. We'd make fun of a guy who's walking down the street and was talking to himself out loud while we have a conversation with voices in our head about how crazy he is. That's how nuts we really are.
Yeah.
And we're doing that when we're competing. So what we have to learn to do is correct without emotion. And that means instead of you idiot, you should recognize that frustration is an important part of learning. When you're about to grow, you're going to get slightly angry. And I don't know about you guys, but I have a bad temper. And the worst thing you can say to somebody who's angry is just don't get angry. That makes me angrier in the long run. And that's what we keep saying to ourselves with these criticisms is, don't be frustrated, pay attention, but welcome the frustration as an agent of change. It is, and part of that, ignore the voices as much as you can. They'll never shut up, but correct yourself without emotion. Did I see anything? Did I feel anything? So there's accuracy mode, there's speed mode put together. And am I paying attention to the clear goal I set for myself? And that's what allows us to correct without, it's almost a silent correction, it'll just be instantly happening. Like bill drills are a great place to experience this, where you start getting enough control over bill drills that you can feel it's starting to go out of place and you can put it back in. And it seems like you have this strange sense of control over it. And that's one of the great things about shooting bill drills is it's a long enough trackable program for the mind to start establishing a pattern. And what we're really, really good at is pattern recognition. So when you get a little upset and you critique yourself, that's okay. Give yourself a little goad. The frustration's fine. We call it simmering ambivalence. All right. And it gets you to a point where you're primed to learn and do it, and then let yourself be, and let the shooting teach you in that moment. If the shooting's going well, let it be. Just shoot. If it's not going well, it's teaching you. And if you'll accept it as a correction, you'll make far less mistakes. I always find that, if you make one mistake in a string of shots, that's fine. But if you make the same mistake over and over and you repeat it harder and harder, what you're really indulging in is the ability to be very stubborn. I'm going to try harder. So here's my final key to you is try medium. Never try hard. It never works. It never has worked. If you ever watch a kid try something really hard, what they've got to do is try a medium. And what they kind of do is we all get aggravated enough to kind of give up a little bit, and then we do better. So the word is just try medium. When you find yourself in that situation, try medium. Don't try extra hard. Pay attention. Let the shooting teach you. You'll get better in a moment. Feel
That's
like
awesome.
I'm doing a special coaching session for you guys.
Well,
Can't help myself.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we're kind of sitting here just trying to absorb it. I know.
Hey,
am.
man, I'll tell you, I'll take it. I'll take it. So moving on from the mindset thing, when it comes
Yep.
to accuracy, speed, and performance,
Yep.
what whether it's drill wise or whatever targets we're using, what's your process to isolate that down for each one? Do we, even when we're shooting speed, are we still somewhat focused on accuracy, or are we just focusing on inoculating ourselves with what speed looks like?
That's a great question. So there's two filters. How much information do I need and how much time do I have? The problem with trying to train both of those at the same time is that's purely performance mode. So we want to train accuracy to a high level, then we have to let go of time. And it becomes, I'm not saying it can't be timed, but what you see is like, I'll take a shooting drill like the test, 10 rounds, 10 yards in 10 seconds. For a master level shooter, that's probably 3 times, if not 4 times the time needed for those splits, right? So if you have a 1.5-second draw, you have 8.5 seconds to shoot 10 shots. And at 10 yards, you're probably shooting a 0.3 split anyway, 0.4 split. So it's at least triple, if not double it. So we've released time so that we can focus on getting more information. But the real problem is we need to see the information in 3 modes. One is predictive. How is it coming into the target? Is it going where I want it to? And that means I'm going to start prepping the trigger. As I see it enter the target, I'm going to press because it's going to be moving into the future. And then I want to see the front sight or the red dot lift off the target, which gives me the reactive feedback that I've been accurate. And what we're doing is allowing you enough time in accuracy mode to do that. Now, speed mode is completely the opposite of that, is we have to let go of accuracy to a certain extent. So, if you shoot something really fast and you say, I'm going to shoot a smaller target, you just turn it into accuracy mode again. So say I shoot just a USPSA silhouette for draws at 7 yards. And what I'm working on is pure speed. I'm going to make sure that if I make a mistake, like if the draw is not good, I'm going to take a mulligan because I don't want to fight through that in that moment because I'm pushing the edge right now. And if any of you ran track, we all look like track runners, don't we? You might. I don't think you and I did too much.
No,
right?
I came in last on my only run I ever did. So,
but the idea of speed mode is what I see a lot of people do is they try to jog, and they want to get better at running fast by jogging. And I can tell you that's not the way it works. The only way it truly works is if you go fast, and going fast means you'll stumble. And stumbling for us is mean you're going to miss, and you're going to accept a little bit of that. The best part of your training means that about 20% of it's going to be right on the edge of not being able to do it. That's where you want to live because that's where the growth is. So we let go of the accuracy standard and we push the speed. And what we're doing is myelinating the nervous system to a greater speed of conducting the signal. And then what it becomes is more efficient. Judo has a great saying for this. It's maximum efficiency, minimum effort. So we're back to the try medium. In order to be fast, you have to let it go. Now, I'm not naturally fast, which is strange for a fighter. I'm not really slow, but I'm not particularly fast either. Some people are fast, so they just have to let themselves go. What I have to do is I'm so incredibly accurate. I have to trust that that'll be there anyway, and then go as fast as I can. And then my speed establishes itself. And then before I leave the range, I never want to leave in either one of those modes because it's incredibly dangerous. So if you carry a gun for self-defense, what you're saying in accuracy mode is, I'd rather die with a full gun because you'll be too slow to shoot.
Yeah.
And if you leave in speed mode, I want to die with an empty gun and miss my target. Neither one is acceptable because they're both the wrong training methodology. So when we go to performance mode, we want to have the clear goal of seeing the sights and getting feedback from it, which is the most important part of defensive shooting. Did I see the sights lift off the target? Does it need another round? So I'll set up something like, like you can see, I have a target right behind me, and it's got all these shapes on it. So, there's 18 shapes, 19 shapes on it. And what I'll say is everybody gets one, and everybody gets one. So if I miss, I make it up, which is important. And that gives me performance mode. And my only goal is to see the dot. Now I'll time it and say, I'm going to complete this whole drill in 15 seconds. So it puts a little pressure on it. And in the accuracy mode is I have to hit the target. If I miss, I have to make it up. And then my clear goal is see it and call it. And that's what performance mode is. So I leave the range then shooting at my current level of skill and seeing as much as I can and feeling as much as I can instead of being stuck in one or the other.
Okay.
That's impressive. So I would say,
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I could tell you put a little bit of thought into this, just a little bit. So
too much time in my shed of discipline.
When it comes to like you were saying, acceptable accuracy for into which I understand that we want to, like you said, in performance mode, we want to be able to see the dot, call our shots within an acceptable range of accuracy. Various people have different considerations of what is acceptable accuracy. We've all heard the tactical accuracy, and then some people or some instructors go by the 8-inch circle rule. In defensive wise, what would you consider that's truly acceptable accuracy?
Yeah, I get what you're getting at. I'm going to say it a little differently, is the target tells me what to do. So if we look at people, we do have an 8-inch circle right here. We have a 4-inch circle, and we have a 2-inch circle. So the context of the target tells me how fast and accurate I need to be. The problem comes when everybody says, so if you're a purist in accuracy, you say the center of the center and every bullet's got to pass through the same hole. And if you talk to a surgeon, he'll thank you for that because you're causing less damage. And we really don't know what bullets do when they enter flesh. People are incredibly resilient sometimes. In the fight game, I've hit guys so hard with my shin, I thought I broke my shin and they're still standing. People are incredibly resilient. I may shoot one in the center and it may track around the rib and not go where I want to. And I may hit one high, it may go off the clavicle and bisect the heart. So we don't know what's going to happen. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to shoot the thing, whatever size it is, at the speed I'm capable of until I get a change. And if I say in class, line breaks count, because I think if you line break my eye or my aorta, it counts. What I'm saying is the target's slightly bigger. If I say everything has to be inside of it, what I'm saying is the target slightly smaller. And then the target will change size for 5 or 6 reasons. Number one, everybody says, is distance. And of course that affects us. Number 2 is they're actually bigger or smaller, like the chest, the face, and the eye, or shooting from the side or from the back. Those will all change the size of the targets. Next thing is something's in the way. And that could be a person, it could be cover, so you only see not quite as much of the target. And then the final thing is you're moving, which you always will be. The greatest lie ever told was a solid front sight. It's never going to happen because you can't stay still.
Yeah.
He's moving, or you're both moving, which is more likely, which means you can't hold the gun still. You have to shoot while it dwells inside the target. So good enough is exactly what I mean. You look at the context. So if you're shooting a classifier or qualifier or a test, so we go back to the test, we want everything in the black on the B8 test. All right. And it would be better if it was inside the 10. So that means I'm going to be shooting roughly a 5.5-inch circle as quickly as I can. The X's are great, but are they worth the time? Am I that good of a shooter? Can I spend the extra time on it? It's probably better for me to get all 10 rounds in a 10 ring. And if I get some X's out of it, it would be better. But instead, what we say is I'm going to get all X's, and then either we run out of time or we create so much tension that we move the gun when we shoot anyway, and we don't get what we want. That's the problem. And that's exactly what you're talking about. What is good enough? Well, whatever you're doing, whether it's force on force, whether it's shooting, whether it's real life, is going to tell you. And it's going to be the size of the target and the context that drives it. And that's what performance mode is in its heart. Can I look at this situation and know what to do? What is good enough to get the results I want?
That's a great answer.
Thank you.
It's very, it's for anyone that really doesn't, if you had a hard time catching that or quite putting the, everything together, it like what we talk, like Brian said, it's your target's going to give you your feedback. So if you, technically you could shoot somebody in the foot and get a psychological response. And, but that's not necessarily a threat stopping shot placement. So technically whatever counts is whatever counts.
and listen, psychological stops are great too, right? The filter, the bystander effect works both ways. More people viewing event take less responsibility and less likely to act. We know this, the opposite with bad guys is more bad guys attacking usually breaks sooner than a single attacker does, because once you see Al get shot, you see Sam get shot, and then they start to, you decided earlier that this is a bad idea, where one person may very, very, very well committed to it, and they may stay with it longer and may take more shooting. So we're always going to be looking for the action of them changing their mind, changing the context, falling down, running away, and knowing that we can stop in that moment. Because the other thing is a defender, we got to be super careful about is bloodlust. When you're especially a type B personality, when you feel justified, you're very likely to run somebody down and shoot at them more. So we want this sort of shooting that teaches us always, I am done now because the context has been satisfied. And that allows the brain to filter this stuff.
So there's a great example of that happened not long ago in Houston. Did you see the taqueria shooting that had happened? I mean, that right there was, I as far as I know, the guy ended up not getting charged with anything, which to my surprise was very, very shocking. But yeah, I mean, for anybody listening, if you don't know, you can look it up. Houston taqueria shooting. A gentleman came in, had a fake gun, which looked absolutely real. A gentleman in the store ended up shooting him. The guy that was trying to rob the place was down, and he went up and essentially shot him execution style. My opinion on that one. And yeah, he came out of it. And that was a big thing that a lot of people in our world was talking about, like, hey, this guy stopped the threat, but this part of it is not okay. Like, this is what we need to stay away from. Not really to get off topic or anything, but just so everyone's aware. So when it comes to, let's say, work your performance wise and working in your wheelhouse, we're always striving to be faster and as accurate as we can be at speed. If I don't have, or somebody else doesn't have a sub-second draw, and my sweet spot is, let's say, 1 3/4 of a second, and I can function, that person can function right there all day, every day in performance mode on demand. While they always push harder, like, should they be that hard on themselves that, hey, this is my performance level. Yeah, I'm not like these other people over here, but this is my performance level and I'm confident in this.
All right, you packed a lot into that question, so let me go
Sorry.
at it a little. No, it's good. It's really good. So the first is the metrics of performance mode, and we'll talk about that, and then how performance mode works. So metrics, like the sub-second draw is a big deal to everybody, but that's a speed mode, and like I don't see sub-second draws in performance mode very often. Even with high-level shooters, I time people all the time. What I see is a 1-1, a 1-2. They may have an 80 draw in speed mode, but when we go to performance mode, it's going to validate the sights a bit more if they're paying attention. So we're going to spend a 1/4 second, because that's what it really takes, is an extra 1/4 second. And then if you fumble at any time, which you're likely to do, especially from a concealed draw, it's much more fragile because getting the gun out, it'll cost you another 1/4 second. So the number we've really come down to through John Correa's work, for science, is about 1.5. If you have a 1.5 draw, but you need to have a surplus of speed. So if I have a 1 second draw and I need to verify my sights, it becomes a 1.25. And then if I fumble, it becomes a 150. And then it feels as if I'm not rushing, trying, or hurrying, which means my shooting will be better in the long run. If I only have a 150 draw and those other two things happen, then it's 2 seconds. So our hero in the Texas shooting, Jack, it took him a long time to get the gun into play. What did it cost? It cost other people their lives. That's the horrible fact of this. So I'm not telling people you have to be fast. What I'm saying is it takes a certain amount of time to draw a gun. And then there's a whole bunch of platitudes that exist in gunfighting that shouldn't, like accuracy fine, speed is final. Yeah, but even Wyatt Earp wasn't talking about what you think he was. He was talking about fanning the gun. He said you should aim and be quick about it. Take your time, but be quick about it also. What these platitudes do is they give us a kind of a virtue signaling. Hey, I know the wisdom of this. So one that I just attest is never drawn a drawn gun. All right. Jared Rested got shot, so he shouldn't have drawn on the drawn gun. Sometimes you're going to be in a bad situation. What we do know is this, though: when a bad guy's pointing a gun at you and he does what every guilty person in the world does, and if you got kids, you know what I'm going to talk about. Little boys, before they get in trouble, they always do this and they get quiet. All right. So what Force Science and John has looked at is it takes about 1.5 seconds for the body to turn and come back to the middle. If I have 1.5 seconds draw and he's not paying attention, it means I could get into the fight. And this is the value of real depth coaching and statistics, probabilities, and metrics that go behind it. And then when we talk about performance mode, what we have to do is whatever drill we shoot in performance mode, we should only shoot it once. So say I take 3x5 cards, put them on a target, I put 3 of them, each one gets 5 rounds. If I miss, I make it up. I have 15 seconds to do so from the draw. It doesn't matter if I make it or not. What matters, did I see the task and did I do a good enough job? So then when I speak to myself, I was slightly over time, but I shot very, very well. I think I could let go a little bit next time I try a different drill. I'm going to see if letting go is enough. Maybe I don't have to verify this as much. And maybe if my accuracy wasn't as good as did I predict the sight coming into the target? So these are the things that'll feed back for the self-defender. And performance mode, performance coaching methodology means that we're performing as fast as a human being can perform with as much information as available to get what we call an intuitive answer. And the intuition is this, like the Taqueria shooting. The real problem there was time. Was it necessary? Was he at the must phase of doing it? Can I do it? Am I physically capable? Should I do it? Is it morally, can I live with it? May I do it? Does the law allow it? But the final thing is, must I do it? And if I must do it, then I need to know exactly how much time I have and how much information I need. And that's what we're really talking about in performance mode.
That's great. I like what you were talking about. So Todd and I have both taken a couple classes together. But in one of them, they talked specifically about drawing on a drawn gun. And the idea behind that of being, are you in a situation where you feel like you need to draw on the drawn gun? So are you with your family or are you by yourself? Are you in a situation where you can't give up whatever they are asking for? If they're asking you for your wallet, are you willing to give your wallet up? Well, most people will say yes, because a lot of people don't carry cash. A lot of people can just cancel their cards. So, give them your wallet, go about your way. Now, if they've done part of the things we discussed, and again, it's in the situation is, do you think that's where this is going to stop? Or do you have something else you're protecting, i.e. your family? And then you have to make the judgment call on, are you, if other people are in danger, or if you don't think this is going to stop there, can you create a time to move? And that's even where you talked about, like waiting for them to look away, or you drop your wallet on the ground. They have to bend down to pick it up. You can do small things like that to create that window to then draw. And it comes back to, like, generally I'm in the 1-2, 1-3 range to draw and get an accurate first shot. Speed, I can get it down to a 1 second, but I'll be honest, if I'm doing that, I'm not trusting my first shot. I'm just getting a glimpse of my sight, and I'm going for it. So I understand what you were saying and being accurate. If I'm accurate with my first shot, I'm 1-2 to 1-3. I know that's where I'm at, and I can trust that first shot, and I'll trust it all day.
So if I can address something there, so the quarter second is what is required for immediate feedback in the human brain. Anything longer than that is not feedback. So part of the problem with shooting is we shoot a target, then we look at the target, and we come back to our sights. When we're practicing in speed mode and we just see a flash and, it works out, it was on the target, and we can say, all right, that's good enough for speed mode. And then we add the quarter to it, which means we're going to actually witness the sight come in and leave. And then we'll say, all right, I got the feedback that was in the target or it was out. And the process in that moment becomes binary. It's either yes, and if there's any doubt, it's a no, and a follow-up shot is required. And then interestingly, when we talk about force, like if I'm by myself, I'm probably likely to be more aggressive as a human being than if I've got my grandkids with me.
Gotcha.
So the must changes all the time. I'm not going to go back to my daughter and tell her that I got her kids killed because I couldn't control myself. So what we're always talking about is filtering of information. And what is the consequences? What is the feedback? And you're going to have to do this in intuition because you can't do it logically. It's just too slow to count it all up. And the final thing I'll tell you this is my view of rules is this, and the law. It tells you what you can do, not what you can't do. And it's always been that way. It says I can use force in this moment if it's reasonable. If a reasonable person would do this, and it's necessary and it's imminent. It's going to happen in a moment. I have to do something about it. And what we find is people don't get enough practice on this very second decision making. And they want a framework that says I can do it now. And it's never going to be like that. There's going to be where it's too early, it's too late, when you didn't have enough information or you acted incorrectly. So when you're training, what you're really training at heart is your ability to control yourself, to exercise self-mastery. If you're going to carry a firearm and you're not comfortable with who you are and you don't know what guides you, this is the place to start learning. And that's what practice truly is. And that'll allow you to make the best decisions you can. And then if, I've been in a couple bad situations in my life, all you can say is I did everything I could. That's it. I did the best I could. And it's people that can do that do much better in life because, perfect is always the enemy of good. And what we're looking for is just good enough. What is good enough? And for the armed citizen, our only goal is what? To get away. It's not even to get home. They may be in our house. It's to get away safely, to break contact with the other person, to get away from the fight, to survive. And it's not to be the punisher. It's not to be law enforcement. We're not going to arrest them and put them in jail. It's not to be a military where we seek to close with them and destroy them by any means. It's for us to simply survive because our fight will always be a surprise to us. We don't get to pick the time and place. So we have to start thinking about this. And then what we're talking about is go signals and no go signals that exist in the mind. And, several go signals are, nobody's going to put me face down on the floor. Nobody's going to lock me in the back of their car. Nobody's going to put me in a storage room. Those are things. Nobody's going to do something to somebody I love, but that's very clear. Somebody I love. A stranger, it may be a whole different thing. So I think it's good you're exploring that. You think about that side of it, and then the rules will tell you when you can do it.
That's a great way to put it. And, you talking about, nothing's ever going to be perfect. Whenever I get out on the range and shoot, while I have my timer doesn't have a random par time, but I'll set a delayed par time, but I don't sit there and count it out. I've seen guys, they sit there and they're running the drills to be clean at the drill, to master the drill, not really take away what the drill is there to teach us. And whenever I shoot, I don't try to jump the timer. I don't sit there and try to plan like the beep or whatever. I want everything that I'm doing to be completely reactionary, because that's exactly the way that I'm going to perform if I'm presented with a threat. It's going to be, oh shit, I need to deal with this. And so that's kind of how I play that. I don't know if that's actually right or anything of that matter, but that's kind of where my mindset is with that.
I imagine you're very conscientious by nature,
Yes. Yes.
and what you've described is a very conscientious way to approach it. Some suggestions I'd make: occasionally do jump the timer, because you want to know what too soon feels like. You don't want that to be the first time in a fight. So like, we have a lot of talk about shooting too fast in a fight, but if you never experience it and you get this huge adrenaline dump, you're going to shoot too fast. So the place to experience too soon is always on the range, so that you can realize when you're out of control, when you're too far ahead of something. I think that would be a great addition. So try to jump the timer occasionally, because you're in speed mode and you want to know what too soon is. Like, I didn't see it. Then the other part is, the reaction is always going to be guided by a walkthrough. People don't understand that in a fight you get a walkthrough. It's interesting, if you close your eyes and visualize like a bill drill, it'll take you about whatever your bill drill time is. It'll take exactly that amount of time for the mind to visualize it, because it actually replicates the action in your mind. So if I look and I see 3 guys approaching me and I start to make a plan, then I'm no longer reacting. I'm actually getting ahead of the process. The only time I'll truly be in a reaction zone is when I get ambushed and I didn't see it coming, which happens. It does happen to everybody. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can simply be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then you only have one choice, which is get in the fight, get back to it. But you're always going to have a sense of purpose, and you will see it coming. Maybe it's only 1 second, maybe it's 5 seconds, maybe it's 10 seconds, but you can see it coming. So when you practice, visualize the actual events and what would make you go and what wouldn't make you go. And then sometimes when you draw, simply don't shoot. Draw to a low ready. Draw to the finger off the trigger, as if something's changed, so that you really practice in a conscientious manner, not only drawing the gun and shooting, but drawing the gun and not shooting. Because there is times where, like you see young law enforcement guys that have their hands on the gun, we call it nervous ready. Because as you go through post, what they tell you is you're all going to die. They show you horrible videos of officers dying. So they're very nervous at that time. And what that means cognitively is you're too far ahead of the situation. They've already decided that. And now you're pre-programmed what you're going to happen. So what we want is a little bit of flexibility, and a true high level performer can hold 2 or 3 decisions in his mind, where a low level performer has only one, and it either works or it doesn't for that situation. And the likelihood of that working is very little. It's like going to a jiu-jitsu school and they only teach you how to get out of a headlock. Well, the guy puts you in a bear hug. It's useless. You have no help in that situation. So what we have to do is teach the context, the premise of what is speed, what is accuracy, what is performance, and how you're always going to be working it intuitively.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to incorporate that mindset whenever next time I go back out to the range in my dry fire, and every just whenever I'm thinking about it, I'm very I can be driving down the road and like run a scenario through my head, something like that. I'm always constantly just wheels are turning, mental reps, something like that. So this has been great. And moving forward from this, you have a product called image-based decision drill. So can you elaborate on that, what that is?
Sure. It's been what we're talking about. So, my wife really developed this because she's dyslexic. And some of the most successful people in history are dyslexic because the educational system fails them. They're not good readers by nature. So they have to find their own path. And, if you've ever been through death by PowerPoint, we all end up giving a PowerPoint lecture. And it really only favors the people that are able to sit still and take notes. And even it's harmful to them, because taking notes at the same time you're watching something means your mind's distracted. So we wanted some sort of low level simulator that didn't require a lot of equipment, so what she came up with is this idea is there would be an image on the card, and you would have pepper spray, a phone, you'd have your firearm, you'd have a flashlight, you'd have the ability to run away, give verbal commands, and we would just get it down to these 7 basic decisions. If you have real martial arts experience, which I was the final arbiter of that always, meant that you fought a resisting opponent fairly frequently, we'd allow you force on force. And what it allows you to do is start seeing which direction you want to go with these things. So you simply see an image come up and it's a guy with his finger like this. So what do? You know, a lot of people say I just walk away, but he's very close to you proximically. You know, he's well within the 4 foot space. So you really don't have time to do that. So we can kind of explore what turning your back would mean to that situation. And then they start working on verbal commands, which I tell you is the most overlooked thing in training in general, is the ability to talk with articulation and to be flexible in your talk. You know, verbal judo is very helpful with that. There's some great books like Napoleon Hill that can help with it. We really talk to the other person. And what we're seeking to do is have these directions like, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Get back, don't move. And there are alpha commands that you can practice. You have a pepper spray that's inert. You have a target in front of you. If you decide to pepper spray them, then you can practice running away afterwards and making a 911 call. What we start doing is stacking difficulty as time goes on. You have 5 seconds to make a decision when you see the image, and then you respond accordingly. Some images are very fast, you know, and they have a real impact on people. And what's interesting is we've had a lot of mostly younger people, but they wear Apple Watches. So we have a heart rate monitor. And the brain knows no difference between a real experience and a visualized experience. It's exactly the same thing to the brain. And their heart rate runs at least 130 beats while they're making these decisions. And it sounds like a very simple process, but the real problem is there's a rule of 3 that exists in the mind. And that means you can't have more than 3 things held in a cognitive stack. And most people can't hold 3, they can only hold 2. And then the opposite of the rule of 3 is, in order to create a pattern, we need at least 3 things. So you'll hear it in the law all the time, you know, ability, opportunity, intent. That's 3 things. That's the way our brains work. It's not the way the law works. It's the way human brains work in this situation. So what the image-based decisional drills is a very inexpensive way to have all the equipment. And when you're doing your dry practice, you simply hit 1 or 2 cards, and it helps you practice making quicker decisions. You know, I've got an aggressive dog. I'm going to pepper spray him. All right. I've got somebody who's flipping me off. I'm going to walk away. Somebody who's panhandling. I've got my set cognitive stack of what I'll say to them. Say, I'm sorry, I don't have any change for you, and keep moving. I see somebody with a knife coming at me, I'm automatically going to go to the firearms. And it's been real interesting. Unintended consequences is that people are not very good eyewitnesses, as we know. They see things that don't exist. They create stories that don't exist. They transfer colors. They create narratives in their own mind of what's happening. And it's really exceptional if you can explore this. And this is a low-level way to do it, where you can just set it out on a table in your dry practice. Look at these images. You know, she sells it with just the images or with the image kit, where you get a fake phone, which I highly recommend, because dropping your own phone is just simply bad news, and dialing 911. You know, and you get a little flashlight from HK and all that stuff, because sponsored by HK if you can't see, but you get to use these things, you know. And what I tell you, the hardest thing in the world is we're doing what martial arts did before UFC. Some people were strikers, some people were kickers, some people were wrestlers, some people were throwers. And what's wrong with that is it doesn't fit. That's not what the world of fighting needs. For the armed citizen, they need to pay attention, which comes from curiosity. And then when they see something, they have to decide, I'm going to move away from it, because we need to give them permission to do that. And then when that doesn't work, they have to engage in some sort of, use Craig Douglas's language, mucking, managing unknown contacts. And then, do they need a light? Does that deselect them? Do they carry a pepper spray? Which, guys, anybody who carries a firearm, for the armed citizen, pepper spray is a godsend, because we don't have to go roll around with them. We don't have to put them in handcuffs. You just blind somebody and they can't see. And I don't know about you guys, it's probably very good there too, but in Georgia, it's not even considered force. As long as I can articulate a very basic need, I can use this pepper spray. And then you get a practice of putting in your hand and the draw time. You get to see how you perform under pressure. So once again, image-based decisional drills becomes performance mode, where you have a thing and you react to it. And then we got every instructor we could think of to make up his own cards. All right. So mine are all about pre-assault indicators, coming from the martial arts background. Before William Apel passed, he did some for us. They're just messed up psychologically. They're just really weird. You know, Carl Wren and his group did a bunch. So half the people in my class are like, I know them, because they get their own pictures. So it's really cool that way. It's a great training aid. It's easy to use. once you figure it out. And I got to say, the benefits aren't apparent to people because you're fine tuning the intuitive process, which uses recognition, prime decision making. And that's what self-defense is, and that's what law is about. Is, have we seen this pattern? Is this enough information for me to act on? And do I have a timely manner to do it in? And once you start doing that, we've completed the whole circle of the discussion now. And it's, as you can see, every product we make actually interacts in the same way.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. A great breakdown of that. And, I was aware of it, but knowing more in depth of what it pertains to, there's a good chance I might be looking at that for myself as well, to get a little bit more.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind getting it just because I think watching my wife's reaction to using it would be comical.
It's a great gateway drug too. Like people who don't carry firearms, I still let them take that class. But then they don't have a firearm, or maybe they have one at home, or they say my husband is with me. So, and then that changes the scenario. But what it does get them to do is get a flashlight and pepper spray. And I don't have to push it on them, because they suddenly realize they have no answers to pretty much anything that's happening to them. And a very low level investment for them is to get a $10 palm pepper spray and to get a flashlight. And then, as a husband or as a wife or some, have a child out there, gives you some security, because at least they have something now. And the mere act of putting a pepper spray in your hand makes you stand up straighter, and primarily deselects you, because criminals go off the binary decisional process. But if there's any doubt, then the answer is no. So if we can change their gait by giving them a flashlight so they can see in the dark, we can help them be deselected in the long process. That's why people that carry a firearm that have a concealed carry permit commit far fewer crimes, because they tend to be excessively conscientious, and it changes their posture and their gait, and they're less likely to engage in a road rage accident or anything else, because they feel the gravitas of carrying the weapon with them, which changes the posture, which changes the decision process. So it's really interesting.
That's very interesting. Man, I think we covered just about everything. Is there anything else you would like to add for this? Anything that you think that we missed?
I don't think so. I think we got it pretty well honed there. What I would say to everybody who is practicing, don't think you got to practice a whole lot. The brain thrives off recency, which means if you've done it in the last 72 hours, it's fairly recent to your brain and it doesn't go away. So when we talk about practice, we're talking about 2 or 3 times a week to hold a skill. And then if you would be mindful, instead of working on quantity, work on quality and stay present and use some of the things that I talked about. 5 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week would yield tremendous benefits to you, because your body will respond to that. Your mind will understand it, and you'll get the reward in the proper programming. And what will eventually happen is, as it becomes more rewarding, you're more likely to engage in more practice, because you're not beating yourself up. You're getting some reward for it. You're seeing progress. And that's what I would emphasize to your audience. If you're carrying a concealed gun, you've got 3 things you got to work on. Your draw. It's going to be number 1 thing in every fight. Getting the first round on the target. Notice how I said that. First person to get the first hit usually wins. So that says time and accuracy both exist in the same time. First person to get the first hit wins. That's what you're working on. And then following up. Do I need to shoot? Do I need to continue shooting? Am I done shooting? Those sort of things in practice, you can make it really interesting for yourself. And on my YouTube videos, I have just hundreds. I've been doing videos for 7 years. There's hundreds of videos you can watch, and I'm on Active Self-Protection Extra, so there's one every week there. But just take all this free information and don't overwhelm yourself. Find something, work on it. Make sure you stay away from your preference, like accuracy mode, and train all 3. Do a little bit of accuracy, do a little bit of speed, and then end in performance mode with just some sort of drill. Like I have dry fire targets set up in here, and I say, everybody, today's drill was I had 3 targets, so they each get 6, and I had a bullseye. And what I did is a dry reload and then fired 5 shots on the bullseye. And what I tried to do is see if I saw every shot as I did it. And then I knew I was present. I could put the gun away. Always quit before you get that perfect rep. Quit wanting more. When you leave, you should want to practice more. You shouldn't practice until you hate it. This is the great gift of true practice. Practice just enough, and always quit when you're still wanting to do a bit more, because that'll prime the brain and want to come back and do the practice. But if you sit in there and do 10,000 reps, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
How's that for a follow-up? Yeah.
That's great too. And that's a wonderful point, because I mean, it's easily to practice yourself into oblivion to the point to where you're becoming physically drained, and now your performance level is you're trying to force the performance that's not there, and you're just creating bad habits. So yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Great way to end it. So well, if you want, let everybody know where they can find you at, whether it's social media, your website, where your headquarters located.
Okay. It's simple. It's the CompleteCombatant.com. Everything you need is on there. Recommendations, attributions, primarily everything I mentioned, book-wise, people, influencers on one page in there, so you can look at that. And then our YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I'm Chief Chaos Controller, which is a separate Instagram account that we have also that I put stuff up. You can find everything there. But if you go to the website, it's all interactive, because my wife is brilliant that way. Thank God. I do this side of the house. She does that side of the house. It's well organized. And then I'm a traveling instructor. So I'm on the road 30, 35 classes a year. So I'll probably come someplace near you. If you'd like to come train with me, we have a beautiful range in the mountains of Dahlonega. And it is beautiful up here and green, nestled in the middle of a cattle ranch, with shade and a pavilion, indoor bathrooms even. So I've really gone all out on that. So, and I think that's it. I think that covers everything as far as if you want to get in touch, but it's the CompleteCombatant.com. Feel like a radio guy, the CompleteCombatant.com.
Yeah, that's all right. This is the shameless plug power hour right now. We want to get everything out there so everybody can get the help that they need, and so hopefully we can get you a little more business.
I'm so bad about that. I'm just not a good self-promoter. I want everybody to do well. I want my clients to exceed everything, and then I forget to plug myself. So
you sell it better than you give yourself credit for.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much.
It's just genuine.
All right.
I care about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, anybody listening to you can absolutely tell that, you're passionate about what you do. And we really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk with us. For everybody listening out there, hope you all enjoying this episode. Like Brian said, you can check him out on his website. He has all his information there. And for us, you can go find us on Instagram. Go give us a follow. Any of our content that you see on YouTube or our podcast, we really appreciate it if you share it. Get that out to friends and family. Leave a comment. Anything of that manner will help out the algorithm of anyone looking for any 2A content or self-defense content. So until next time, guys, everybody stay safe and train hard.